Welcome to the breakout session on drawing templates and sheet formats. According to the handy app that they've put out there for us this year, it says it's time. So, welcome. My name is Jim Krivoshein. I'm a tech guy for a reseller. We're out of the Chicago area, the central part of the U.S. I've covered a number of different states. Been at this for quite a while. I've done this presentation and a couple others at different SOLIDWORKS Worlds. Have another one tomorrow even. So I've been involved in the community for a long time. As a reseller, I used SOLIDWORKS as an end user for a few years before that. So I got some real world experience first. Used some other modeling systems before that even. But we'll get started with the presentation here on drawing templates and sheet formats. Here's our agenda. We've got 8 different segments that we're going to try to cover. The first one being a review of the methods we go from models to drawings. There's really 3 different ways that we can involve the templates or the sheet formats. So we'll do a quick video on showing you that. Most of what I'm going to show you, it's going to be all PowerPoint. I will show some SOLIDWORKS stuff, but that's all pre-recorded, part of the presentation. We'll get into the sheet format and drawing template, the actual file types, and what information is where. Then we'll talk about creating the sheet format and drawing template, importing the sheet format, which is probably the more common way that people would get started. And we'll talk about configuring the many different things in a sheet format that you might be concerned with, configuring the drawing template. And again, when we talk about the review in step 2, we'll kind of describe the differences between those two, because sometimes it's kind of confusing. We'll configure the part and assembly templates as well to work with the sheet format and drawing templates. And then we'll talk about a couple other items that you might want to configure. How many people have taken the drawings class, either with a reseller or whatever? Okay, a few hands, great. The drawings course through your reseller or whatever has this kind of information that I'm going to present. It's one particular lesson of that course. And I feel that they teach it backwards, because when I teach it, it starts with changing things and setting things up and making it look good and work. And the last thing you do in the lesson is import the DWG file. And for every customer that I've helped get their drawing templates moved over from something else into SOLIDWORKS, I started with the DWG file. So that's kind of how I'm going to present it in more of a, I would think, a chronological order. So with drawing templates and sheet formats, from the model to the detailed drawing, there's a couple different ways we can do that. Some of them are interactive, some of them are more automatic. And I don't know about you, but I love the automated stuff. I want to do as little repetitive, tedious stuff as possible. So I will spend a good deal of time building in some automation. Like I said, there's 3 different ways to do this. The drawing template can prompt you if you use the default drawing template that SOLIDWORKS installs with. You hit File New and it says you can make a part, assembly, or drawing. Or if you go to the advanced mode and it shows you the 3 different templates, if you use that drawing template, it's actually going to prompt you for some stuff. Or you can have it, you can save it so it doesn't prompt you for the drawing sheet format and size. It just prompts you for the views. Or you can automate it a little bit further where it'll make the drawing completely here. So if I click on the logo, we can watch a little bit of my demonstration here. From the part, make file, or make drawing from part, I pick the drawing template. And this first one, it's prompting me for what size piece of paper, and do I want to use the sheet format or not? It's asking me that question every time. And then we drag the views in, like a lot of people would do, to start the drawing process. And then we can mess with the line types or whatever. The second way is to have saved the drawing template as a sheet, the sheet format as a drawing template, so that when you pick it, it already knows the paper size and the sheet format that goes with it. And then it's the same process of dragging in the views, except it doesn't ask you for paper size and sheet format. Some people like that, but most of my customers, they just want to pick on the one to be done. Now this third one here, when I use this template, you'll notice there's no dragging of views, there's no prompting for size and paper sheet. They're just there. And the dimensions are brought across for you. So through the automation process, the stuff that's built into core SOLIDWORKS, you can go from a part to a drawing in as little as 4 clicks. And you can have your front, top, right isometric view. You can have the model dimensions brought across, and you can fill out the title block. And that's really what this presentation is kind of about, is how to get to that point instead of having to use the default one that they give you, and it asks you for the size every time. You got to pick the sheet format every time and drag your views out every time. Because to me, that seems a little repetitive. All right, so that covers the first stage here. Second one, reviewing the sheet format and drawing templates. There's a lot of information that goes on in here in these different files we want to talk about. And when we talk about the sheet, terminology is always big in SOLIDWORKS. When somebody calls me on the phone and says, I'm having trouble putting in a hole in my drawing, I know right away whatever they're saying isn't what they're meaning, because you don't put holes in drawings. You put holes in parts. You put parts on drawings. You might annotate a hole, but we don't put a hole in a part, or put a hole in a drawing and put it in the part. So with that theme of information and terminology, the sheet is the size of the paper. Okay? It might have the sheet name, if you have more than one sheet, multi-sheet drawing type stuff. The projection type, first angle versus third angle. Being an international user conference, we're going to have people that use both types here. And I had a discussion earlier. Apparently, there's a third type. If you're in England, they kind of use a combination of both with the drawing standards. So they use, first angle, but then they use a different type of dimensioning scheme that's kind of backward. I don't know. It lost me. I was glad I didn't have to try and figure that out. But and the view labels in the scale. Now, the sheet format is something different. That is your title block lines, the notes, the images, anchor points, any custom properties, that sort of stuff. It's a separate item. It has a separate file. And the reason for that will come up a little bit later. Drawing template. This is what most people want to use. So when you hit File New or Make Drawing From, you have drawing template to select that's specific, where the sheet and sheet format is probably already, the sheet size, I should say, and sheet format is already specified for you. Right? You could be prompted for it if you like, but a lot of times our drawing templates store that so you don't have to pick that. And they may contain predefined views. That's what you would use to set up the template so that when you make the drawing from the part, that it creates the views for you. Okay. The one drawback with predefined views is you will be forced to use the front view of the model as the front view on your drawing, the top view of the model. So if you start out your models poorly for the drawing environment, we will automate the drawing to be poorly laid out. So garbage in, garbage out. So it does require a little bit more forward thinking maybe. Views, these are what's going to hold the model lines, the annotations, the dimensions. The drawing file itself, that holds all of this stuff when we actually save the file. File extension-wise, the sheet format, the SLD DRT, sometimes referred to as the DIRT file, because if you insert the I in there, it's SLD DIRT. But again, this is holding the title block information, the lines and stuff, the borders, the notes, any embedded images for your company logo or something like that. A drawing template, this is going to store the sheet format, size information, as well as any predefined views. And then the drawing file itself is all of your data inside of that you actually put on the drawing. So, and I got a note to myself here, sheet formats may be optional. Some companies don't actually make these sheet formats at all, and you don't really need to. But if you're going to use a multi-sheet drawing, if you've got more than one page to a drawing, well, then you're going to need a sheet format. And the file locations is kind of a big deal because you want all this stuff to be in a multi-user environment out on your network where everybody's pointing to the same thing. So consistency being key there. So that covers point 2. Moving on to 3, creating a sheet format and drawing template. Where do you start? Right? You just got your SOLIDWORKS, you're all excited. You drank the reseller story Kool-Aid and you're ready to go. And then you make your first drawing and you're like, wow, this doesn't look anything like our drawings. How do I make it look like something somebody in manufacturing should build for us? First place to start is from scratch. And I'm kind of a fan of this to a point. So you can start a drawing. You could use the drawing template from SOLIDWORKS and choose to turn off the sheet format and come in with no title block, no sheet format. And then go to edit sheet format mode and start creating. Okay. When I do this, I like to start from the lower right corner. I'll go in and change the units, put in a sketch point, and put it in the lower right corner and fix it, so that when I create the lines for my title block and that sort of stuff, I can then dimension from it and I can control it precisely. Anybody who's used the SOLIDWORKS drawing template and tried to manipulate it much, it's like, oh, okay, this is not the way maybe I would have done it. It's hard to manipulate because there's no definition there. So here I'm just putting some dimensions in on the lines. I'm locating it from what I'm calling an origin point on the lower right there. I'll draw a quick rectangle here for the start of the title block. I'm not going to go very much further with this in the video, but just a couple dimensions to control it. Now when you get, I can talk faster than the video. All right, when you get out of sheet format mode though, it leaves the dimensions visible, which would look pretty unprofessional if you printed your drawing. So you want to go back in there and use the hide and show annotations to hide the dimensions. Some people might put them on a layer and turn it off. But we want to keep the dimensions there and control the line, so when it comes time to make a change, modification, it's a lot easier because the stuff you developed you can control. So you could start from scratch. That's not very common unless you're really particular about your stuff. I tend to be that way, so if you're that kind of a person, it might be okay. The other option is to load the SOLIDWORKS defaults and modify. And I'd look a little bit like this, where you take the existing drawing, and this time we use the sheet format that SOLIDWORKS provides. We display that. And then you right-click and do your edit sheet format, and you see that there's some stuff in there, and it's probably not exactly the way you want it. So then you have to go through and start manipulating it. And we'll probably show more of that later. But by far and away, probably the most practical, most common is to import from a DWG file or DXF file from some other system that you might have used previously, and then we manipulate it. And that's really what the rest of the presentation is about, is all the different things we got to do to make it more SOLIDWORKS friendly. Right. So importing the sheet format is next. So we start with file open, use the DWG file or the DXF. The dialog comes up here that you see on the screen, and we're going to create the new SOLIDWORKS drawing. We're going to convert to SOLIDWORKS entities because we're going to use it for SOLIDWORKS going forward. We're going to have to look at the layers, and then we got a lot of little details in paper size, document template scale, and geometry positioning. So, oops, let me back up one there. I have a video for this to show you what this looks like. All right. So I'm starting with the DWG file there. Going to pick open, it's going to bring up the import dialog there. I'm going to convert to the SOLIDWORKS entities. Hit next. Here's all the layers. And usually what I get from a customer is an existing drawing when all I really wanted was a title block. So you go through and you turn off the layers and whatnot, thinking you're not going to get those to come across. The reality is it's translating the entire file, whether you got it checked on or not, is the only difference. So what's important is the layer selected for the sheet format. And you want to make sure you get the right layer or combination of layers, because sometimes people don't have the right stuff on the right layers, even though they named them real nice. So I turned off all the layers except for sheet format to be brought to the sheet format mode. And that's really the big trick right there. Next we're talking about centering it on the sheet, which template, what paper size, what units, pick finish, and it comes in. It looks like, hey, I got rid of all the lines, right? All the view lines that were there. You turn on your layer toolbar and start turning the layers back on, you'll see that it translated the entire file. It didn't just strip out the stuff you asked for. So I turn all the layers on, make sure that my title block is on the sheet format stuff, and I delete everything else because I didn't need it. And hopefully somebody didn't give you a really big drawing to work with, and you got a lot of stuff to delete. But you might have extra layers you don't really want or need going forward in SOLIDWORKS, so you might need to do some cleanup here. Sometimes I'll prep some of that in DraftSite at first, just to reduce the monotony in SOLIDWORKS. So we start by bringing that in, and then we can go into the sheet format mode and start looking at the lines, and none of them are vertical, none of them are horizontal. And if you're going to start manipulating stuff because you want to massage your title block a bit as you go forward in SOLIDWORKS, well, you have to add some of that if you're going to start manipulating it. And here I'm just showing you can pop in some dimensions to start controlling it. It ended. Good. So that's sort of the import process. Configuring the sheet format, a little bit more here. So we're going to do this in an example drawing with an example part. When you're trying to customize and build in the automation to fill out the title blocks, to put in values like I assign the material in the part, and I want it to show up automatically on the drawing, you want to have some sample part view added to the drawing so that when you try to create those properties, you can get them from a drop-down list instead of having to try and create them and type them in from scratch and get the syntax right. It's just way easier to just put a junk part example on the view and use the references then. Again, we're going to need these for multi-sheet drawings. If you don't do multi-sheet drawings, the sheet format may not be as critical. If you're going to change sheet sizes, though, if you start out on an A-size piece of paper and find out that's not going to fit real well, then you want to switch. Rather than recreating the drawing all over again, you can just switch the paper size and switch to sheet format if you have the sheet format file to do that with. Typically, we save it out after the drawing template is working fairly well, after we've tested it some. And the way you do that is from the File menu, and it's not Save As. Why SOLIDWORKS chose to put this in a different location, I don't know. It's just always been on the File menu specifically to save out the sheet format of that dirt file. So, configuring the drawing template is next, and there's a lot of little bits to this, broken out in a lot of little pieces. First, editing the sheet format. Lines, relations, dimensions. Again, we're going to go into the sheet format mode. We're going to probably turn on the sketch relationships to see if there's any in there. And any that aren't in there, you might want to go and add. This is a SOLIDWORKS type provided template, so it won't have very many, so you have to put them in there. Showing your annotations, I've already got some of them added here, but then you would go and add in, I shouldn't say annotation, dimensions. I've added a bunch of them in there. You would probably want to put a few more in there if you want to have control over it. You don't have to put these dimensions and relations in. A lot of companies in a big hurry don't want to spend a lot of time. You don't have to, but it may come back to bite you later when you try to manipulate it, and it's very poorly controlled, so you pay for it later maybe. So my recommendation is maybe to try to put in what's important at least from the start. So notes, linking them to properties to build in the automation, so when you use your sheet format and your drawing template, that it'll put the right information in there for you each time so you don't have to do it. Pulling it from the model. So here I'm going to put in a model just so I have something to reference, like I mentioned in the last slide. You want to have some geometry so that you can build the links to the part going forward. So here I've gone into the part, looking at the file properties, things like description and material, stuff like that, you would assign to the part. Here's an example of material. Right now it's nothing specified. When I change the material here in the tree, changes the part, you see it in the tree. If we go back to the properties, either through the file menu or the icon, you can see that it's showing that it's referencing that. And now I want that to show up on the drawing. So we're going to go to the drawing that we're practicing with or testing or setting up. And we're going to edit the sheet format, and we're going to make a note that will pull that information each time. So edit sheet format, get in that special mode, create a note. It can be a mixture of free text as well as a link. So I got material is, and then I'm going to come over here. I can pause that. In the text format group box, there's a little button of, there's many buttons, but there's one that links to property, a little piece of paper with a chain link and a hand. When you click on that, this is where it's going to go and allow you to reference information from other places. This little window comes up. Current document means the drawing you're working with. Things that come off the drawing that you might be interested in are who checked it, who drew it, what revision is it at. That might be file property information that you want to pull from the drawing. In this case, I want to pull the material. My drawing, I don't care what the material of the drawing is. It could be vellum, it could be cheap paper, I don't care. What I care about is what is the material of the part. So we want it to link to the model in the view specified in the sheet properties, meaning whatever view you drop on there first, that's what it's going to reference. So we pick from that radio button, we switch this to model and view specified in sheet properties. And then from the drop down here, this is why you put the view on the drawing in the first place, your test model, is so that you can get any of the file properties in the list here that the model has. So you create the file property in the part first, give it a name like material. When you have a view here, it can reference it and show you. You don't have to type in the syntax in the note. You just pick it from the list. We'll let this go. And then you should see it's going to populate that note with the right information. And now going forward, if somebody was to change the material of the part, the drawing is going to automatically update. We're going to save this template so it always has that in there, so any part we use or any assembly going forward has that information available as well. Assembly materials maybe not realistic, but the concept of the note being linked back to the model is the important thing. Images, a lot of times we like to put our company logos in there. I've always used it as kind of a method to identify when they switch CAD systems, give them an updated logo, use the one off their website. Insert object, and then create from file, pick the company logo. They usually come in rather obnoxiously large. If it doesn't come in right, if it comes in as an icon, even though you turned off the check mark, not as an icon, the recommendation is to open it up in like Paint first. There's something going on in Windows where it doesn't work right. But then you got to resize it a little bit and move it around and position it where you want it. But that's done in the edit sheet format mode again, so it becomes part of the sheet format. We've got to have nice pictures in there nowadays. Okay. Defining the title block. How many people have been using SOLIDWORKS more than 3 years? Lots of hands. Great. Okay. So you've been through a few updates, and you've probably realized that there's a couple hundred pages of what's new that comes out, and maybe you spend some time looking at it. Maybe you go to a reseller, doing a what's new presentation kind of thing, try to learn what's going on. There's been some stuff that's been added to the drawing templates over the last few years that maybe you're not utilizing, but you could. And maybe you're not because it's the way you've always done it, and it's been working, and you just do it the way you've always done it. One of the old school methods, for those of us who've been around more than a few years, a lot of times we would go, when we needed to add text to a title block for a drawing that we're going to type in manually, we would go into edit sheet format. The views all disappear, which freaks out new users at first. And then you modify a note or you type something in. But that's kind of clunky to go in and out of sheet format. You're really not trying to change the title block. And to put the note at the sheet level, not in the title block, is just prone to being moved and adjusted unintentionally. So a few years ago, SOLIDWORKS created an actual title block function in your sheet formats. Where, if I show the video here, when you edit the sheet format mode, you can then define a title block as an option. You can define a rectangular area where you want to right-click when you want to fill in the information. And then from the notes and properties that you have selected here, you start picking these. It'll populate the text field in the property manager there. And the order you pick them is the order they're going to tab through when you try to fill out this information. You got some arrows on the left here. You can move things up and down. You can even change the tool tips when you hover over them. So I'm populating that, creating my title block as SOLIDWORKS sees it. And then when you're not in edit sheet format mode, you're just in regular drawing mode, you see this area here, I can right click anywhere inside that box now and actually enter the title block data. Okay. So now I can click on any of those cells and start typing information. And if you don't look too closely at my screen image right now, as I'm typing, it's not showing until I hit tab, and then it pops up like it's there. There's a little bit of funkiness in 2015 SP 1.1 with the display there, and I'm not sure why, but I've seen it come and go over the years. So just roll with it. Question?
Do you define the title block on the template if you're doing so that this is the same for every user? I don't think I asked that.
I think I know where you're going. So I think the question is, where do you do this and how do you make it available for everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can start with really any drawing, whether it's got views on it or not, and go into edit sheet format mode, define the title block area, and select the cells that you want to fill out or be able to go through and fill out without having to go into edit sheet format mode in the future. Once you get that set, you get out of sheet format mode, and then if there's no views on there, you just save it as your drawing template. If you want to put that into other drawings, you want to replace it, You got an existing drawing, you want to be able to replace it, whether they're going with the same paper size or they're upsizing on a piece of paper. You would need to save it as a drawing template. As a sheet format, so that you can replace just a sheet format on an existing drawing. But you would want to definitely save it as a drawing template without the views on it. So if there's views on it, you want to go delete them. I'm going to show a little bit more of that later, so that might become a little clearer than my talking. So sometimes it's better to show than to talk. So here I'm going through, kind of just tabbing through, filling out some information. And some of those file properties are related to the drawing. Some of it are related back to the actual model. So I've zoomed back out. I'm going to open up the part, and I'm going to show you the file properties here. You can see that I have a description, or I should say a finish of paint, and I did it on the drawing. I'm going to change it to green here in the part. Pick OK. We'll switch to the drawing. You should see that it now says it's green, but I can edit the sheet format, edit the title block data here from the drawing, and I can change the value from, say, green to something else, which again doesn't display real well right now until I hit OK. Now it's blue. That's going to update the model. Okay, so that's kind of, and there's the properties changed to blue. So what's kind of slick about these file properties on the drawing with these notes is some of them, most of them, can be bi-directional. From the old question.
Is there a way to turn that off, disable that?
Disable the bi-directional change. The way I would recommend that you disable it is if you define the title block area and then you select the fields to enter, don't pick that one. Because then they won't get to it. Because they'll learn to right-click and enter title block data, and they'll never get there. They would have to go to edit sheet format, and they'd have to go to the text field, and then they could try to manipulate it outside of the automation. But they'd have to really go out of their way to mess it up for you. But I don't think there's really a way to say I only want it one direction from the part to the drawing or vice versa. But from the old school, the 2D days, a lot of times people wanted to set things like material or whatever on the drawing because that's where they were documenting it. We do it in the model, so we want to push it down to the drawing. But things like description and finish, paint, most of those you can set up to be back and forth bi-directional. The one you don't want to try to do is material. Because material is assigned to the part, and when you do that, you right-click on it, and you pick from your favorites, or you go into the material database and you pick from a longer list. Imagine trying to do that from a drawing in a field in a title block. I needed to somehow dig back into the part, right-click on the material, pull up a database, show me the list, show me my favorites, all that kind of stuff. It's too much for SOLIDWORKS to handle that right now. So you wouldn't want that one to try to be done manually unless you are never using the material database on a part, which some customers I've run into will do that, but it's always kind of freaked me out because then you don't have good material properties on the part. There's a chance for a disconnect. And when you try to do weights, who knows what the part is, because the drawing says this, but who knows what they modeled it to. So, was there a question in the back?
Yeah, most of my shops do a lot of it, and when I export, it does some really weird stuff in the scales. Is there a way that you can draw and scale the sheet format around it until like the print size?
Not that I'm aware of. The question or the nucleus of the problem seems to be when you take a SOLIDWORKS drawing and you make it a DWG. Is that right? Yeah. So you try to export it for AutoCAD, DWG, DXF. The potential for the scaling issue, yes. The paper in SOLIDWORKS is always 1-to-1. The views are always scaled, much the way if you made an old pencil and paper drawing, the piece of paper would be 1-to-1 and you might draw at quarter scale. And when you dimension it, you would put in a number that's 4 times rather than what it really measures. The old school methods in AutoCAD, you would draw everything 1-to-1, and you would take the title block and a piece of paper and scale it up 4 times. And then when you went to print it, you would invert that on the print so it scaled it back down. Since SOLIDWORKS does it different, when you go back to that old method in AutoCAD, that gets to be a scaling issue that you have to deal with. And I really don't know a good way around that. there.
sheet just documented the same scale, but you've got multiple sheets,
Yeah, then you're really in trouble. Yeah.
The save as for the option should have that scale 1-to-1 box, and I haven't ever had any drawings go out that weren't
One-to-one then?
You had to go sheet by sheet. You couldn't.
Okay.
them all out at the same
Yeah, that does sound familiar. There should be a setting in the save, but as you said, you probably have to do it sheet by sheet to get the one-to-one scaling each time. You might want to consider taking a look at the task scheduler that comes with SOLIDWORKS. You'll find it under the Start Programs, SOLIDWORKS, probably under SOLIDWORKS Tools, I think. Task scheduler has a way to do exports for you on a scheduled basis. Might want to experiment with that and see if you can get it to kind of set up to do it in a more automated fashion, but the multi-sheets, if I was a betting man, I would say I don't think it's going to work real well. You're going to have to try it and see what happens. All right, anchor points. Anchor points in drawings are where things should go when you use different types of tables. We got a title block item here in the tree that we also have under the sheet format in the tree, these different anchor points. And you can set those initially from SOLIDWORKS templates. They're in all kinds of crazy places like the edge of the paper rather than the edge of the border lines. So if you want to set those or find out where they are, you kind of got to be in edit sheet format mode and hover over these. You see my mouse going back and forth. I'm trying to get it to kind of flash a little bit out there because it doesn't put a nice symbol like an anchor for an anchor point, which is what I would have expected. So to set them, you find some geometry corner point or whatever that you want to use. You right click, set as anchor for the type of table, whether it's a bill of material or a revision table, stuff like that. Those anchor points are kind of important. You don't have to use them. And if you don't know where they are, when you insert the table, you can choose in the property manager not to use the anchor point. But if you generally put your bill of material in the same spot, you could, as you're putting in a bill of material, say use the anchor point, and it'll always put it there for you so you don't have to place it. And then if you don't want it there, but you've defined the anchor point, you can choose not to use it and just place it anywhere on the page. So you can deviate from what you normally would do. So those are just a few other things to consider. The problem with the anchor points is there's the bill of material, there's a general table, there's a revision table, there's a weld table, there's a cutlass table, and there's just a weld table, there's just a whole lot of general tables. So you might have to set a few of those, at least the ones you use, if you have a general location, if you're going to set them. How many people noticed the zone function in 2015? Couple, maybe, not really. It wasn't an earth-shattering enhancement. But if I pull up one of their drawing templates for 2015, you see it's going to have A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, 4. Those kind of zones help people identify, especially on more complicated drawings, maybe your revision, where the revisions happened, where you should find revision A's information or whatever. In the past, this has always been, well, type it right in. Just whatever you like, type it in for those rows and letters and stuff. In 2015, they finally built in some automation to this to make it smart, make it parametric, like a SOLIDWORKS thing. So that's what I'm going to show you here. This video is a little bit longer. But when we use a revision table now, I'll just put one in here. And I'll add a revision. You right-click on the table, pick revision, add. And then you can place the symbols. And as you place them, in the zone column of the revision table, it's putting in, zoom up here a little bit, the zone letter and number combination of where you put the symbols. So imagine if you're annotating your views, you would see that. And as you drag them around, they'll automatically update, okay, back into the revision table. So they'll combine them if necessary. In your document properties, there is zone information here now in the document properties of your drawing sheets category there for the zones, okay? So you can create these and define these if you want to use them. Where do you want to start them from? Do you want to start from the upper left corner? Do you want to use letters for rows or columns? You get that kind of stuff set up. This is how you kind of start out. It's not all the setup for this. They put the setups in two different places, or two sections of information in two different places. This is where do you start from? A and 1 is in the bottom right, top left. And then what are you using letters for, columns or rows? And then to actually define how many, you go into the drawing, go back into sheet format mode, and then if we right click here, zone tag editor, you can define columns and rows if you have the notes you want to use, but there's a more button which allows you to set up how many rows and columns are going to be on the drawing. Now right now I don't have any text or any lines defining the zones in my title block, but if I want, or my sheet format, if I wanted to define those, this is where I come right click, edit the tags, and then in its more properties I can get to this and I can say, well, I want, instead of 2 rows, I want 4. So the combination of rows and columns is there. And then it just kind of allows you to have that kind of grid system. Here I'm putting in some notes and I'm going to copy and paste it a few times. It's really the same note. Okay. Got the letter A, all over the place, but I need A, B, C, 1, 2, 3 kind of thing. And right now I don't really care about where I'm placing it. I'm just kind of getting it to function first. So I'm just kind of rounding the drawing like they did. And then we edit the tag editor. In these columns and rows, you go click on these notes for whether they're supposed to be column headers or row headers. Okay, so I'm doing both top and the bottom. For column information, and now for rows, I'll do the left and the right. And I want you to watch the letter A's change. Okay, as soon as I pick OK here, boom, A, B, 1, 2, 3, 4, based off of that grid system comes up. So now it's just a matter of, well, where do you want to place them to make them look good? You know, you want to line them up to each other and whatnot. I don't know if how many people have customized a command manager to add a toolbar? Okay, that's kind of a hidden function. It's way more complicated than it needs to be in SOLIDWORKS. They really should automate that or make that less complicated. But if you right click on your command manager and do customize command manager, this window comes up. And a lot of people have seen this. And you see these toolbars listed here with these little boxes and you turn them on, but that's the old school toolbars that are on the left and right, top and the bottom. You got rows and columns and you can float them in the graphics area and it kind of makes a mess. I think they should I'll have to walk over there to those guys and tell them. They need to put 2 columns here, check marks, one for the command manager, one for regular toolbars. Because if you want to add the toolbar to the command manager, you have to go up to this little tiny tab that shows up right here once this customize window comes up. And a lot of times you have to move it out of the way because it covers it up. But that little tab there with a sparkle on it allows you to add to the command manager the ones that you don't see when you right click. You'll see like sheet metal and weldments. But the alignment toolbar, which is kind of handy, is not even in the list when you right click. And I want to add that. So I went into the customize area and then I can click on this tab and I can do add tab and I get another list. Looks a lot like the one we just saw, but it's incredibly convoluted to get to. But if I turn on my alignment or my align toolbar, now you see it shows up here in the command manager and I can turn it on and off at will. But you have to go through that first. Either they should have them all there in the right click the first time, or that first box that we see here, there should, maybe a check mark here for old school and command manager or something. Make it simpler. It took me so long to figure that out the first time it came out. I had to do a blog about it because it took me a while.
Have you ever had to turn them all off?
Turn them all off? No.
I usually warn Joe to turn them all off.
Does that cause problems?
It has to get turned back on.
Reset the registry, start over?
It's not that bad.
I probably just cut my losses. Yeah. So I'm using the alignment tools here to kind of line up the text to the uppermost or to the leftmost or whatever. If you haven't used these tools, when you're trying to organize text and make it line up to each other, they can be kind of handy, kind of make the drawing look a little bit more professional there. So you can select them one at a time. You can window select them. Align top will align all the notes to whatever is the highest one that you selected, getting them all horizontal to each other. And then I'm lining them up left and right with their pairs from top to bottom for the columns. But this is brand new for 2015, so if you have an existing drawing that has these types of rows and column for zone information, it won't be necessarily automated, but you could modify it so that it is. So when you add the revision to the revision table, those notes will be smart and parametric. Okay? So. So here I'm going to add the revision table back in and add the revision to it to show you that it is indeed going to work off of my combination here now. So, and you could put the little extra tick mark lines in there to divide out the zones a little bit more, but you can't really see it changing because it's so small and this is a big screen in a huge room. But we'll upload these presentations for you, and you can go back and watch them if you want to see this. And I've uploaded I've zipped up all these videos as individual little pieces. Every time you see me click, it's a separate video. So if you download this presentation, and they should have the videos with it, with the PowerPoint, you can get the video you want to see instead of having to watch the whole hour to get to the 2 seconds you wanted to see. All right, next is view orientations, title block, revision block, etc. This is maybe not very common, but maybe you like it. A lot of times you need to zoom up on the title block, especially big pieces of paper. You can actually save a view orientation in the drawing. That is, say, title block. And you can make one that is maybe revision block. Okay? So you just zoom up to the model, you zoom out, and if you hit the space bar, you click on it, it takes you right to the title block. Okay? And then maybe make one for the revision block. Zoom up on it so you can see a good space bar. Say I want to name view. I'll call this revision block, so that when I need to move from one to the other area, I just hit the space bar, click on the view, and it takes me over there. I kind of like that, especially you get those really big pieces of paper, E-size, or the ones that fold up. And when you fold it up, you got to fold it just the right way so the right information shows up, because you got information in duplicate places. So when you flip the page or stack the pages or whatever, that works out right. Having those saved views to switch back and forth to make sure it's got the right information can save you a few seconds here and there. That adds up after a while. Sheet properties for your drawing. The name of the sheet, the projection, and the view labels. We're doing a lot of testing. Okay, and we go back to the sheet properties here. Before you save this out, considering it done, and you're going to test it maybe one last time. Maybe the sheet name, maybe you name sheets specifically because you have more than one sheet. Maybe you want to use something different other than sheet 1. You could set that here. The type of projection, again, third angle is what we use here in the States. I know Europe likes to use the first angle, and after that, I just don't know. Not my experience. View labels is probably the big one, because if you've done any testing with putting in details in sections, it went A, B, C kind of thing, and then you delete the views because it worked out well. I want an empty drawing to save as my template. It remembers the letters. So if you left off on G, and then you test it you have one of your counterparts test it, he's like, why every time when I start a drawing view, it starts with I for a detail? Can't we start at A? It's because it saved that information, so you might have to zero this back out to A. So don't worry, it'll probably happen. There's too many little details of trying to get this all set up just right that you'll find yourself going around like a little hamster trying to get all these little moles smacked back down in their little holes. These are kind of minor ones, but the labels is probably the bigger one. And the projection will really mess people up. You want to give somebody a bad day, flip the projection around on them. So now that we've got it pretty much set up, it seems, question?
I note there, in our company, we use first angle and third angle.
Okay.
Users will make multi-sheet drawings. So when they paste the sheet out of one drawing into another to combine sheets, you have to be real careful about first angle versus third angle, because if you carry over, sheet 2 can be first angle while sheet 1 can be third angle.
Wow.
If you copy and paste the sheet into another drawing.
Just making engineers have to be even sharper than they already have to be with that system. Yeah, okay, if that's what it's got to be, that's what it's got to be, and everybody just has to pay attention real close. I do have some customers that they're here in the States, but their parent company is, say, in Germany, and Germany designs like the core system, and they do all the interface to anything here in the States. So they're working with both all day long, and I don't think I ever want to work for them. It's scrambled my brains. But yeah, so once you got it working with your example model, you're going to save the sheet format out through the file menu. Again, it's not save as, it's just file, save sheet format. This is a DIRT file, the SLD DRT file. Then you want to go back and look at the sheet properties, which is weird. We just did sheet properties right here for name, projection, and view labels. Once you save the sheet format out, and you call it my B size sheet format or whatever, you want to go back into the sheet properties of your drawing because here it tells you which sheet format it's referencing or which one it did reference when you created the drawing. Okay? And while you might save this as a template, so when you say File New, you pick B size and it's already ready to go. Or from a model, you say Make Drawing from Part, and you pick B size, it's ready to go. If you don't come back in here and verify that this path to your sheet format is accurate, when you add the second sheet, it can't find it. And it decides to use some out-of-the-box SOLIDWORKS one instead, which looks horrible compared to what you did. So,
You have to resave the sheet properties or in the template?
first we're saving the sheet format out. So we have the individual title block with the lines and the notes in the image by itself so that we can bring it into other drawings if we're changing paper size. But we save it out, and then we go to the sheet properties and we make sure that this location matches where we just saved it, so that as we add sheets, it can find it and add the same one. A lot of people think that, when you start a drawing, whatever sheet border lines and stuff that you have on the first page, when you add a sheet, it's just going to copy it from the first page. It doesn't. It re-references that path. And if that's to a drive that doesn't exist or to a folder on somebody's machine that you don't have access to, it says, I can't find that. And then you get one with some substitution that SOLIDWORKS does. So if you use multi-sheet drawings, when you're going to make your drawing template, so when you say File New, you have it already set, and you want it to work with multi-sheet drawings, you want to make sure that this path is set correct, which is what I'm trying to show here, that you would browse to your specific sheet format folder, which that's kind of a mess I got there, but you got to point to it so that it shows the correct path. Otherwise, when you add a sheet, it doesn't know what to grab.
So if you're on a network,
Mm-hmm.
you would have to check that after moving it to the network or verify that?
I would have saved the sheet format directly to the network in that location. And it should, if you've got your file locations set up pointing only to that, it should take you there anyway, so you don't have to really browse to it. If you have more than one, and I think you can have more than one for sheet formats, maybe not. If it's the first one, then it might not be the right one, so you might have to put it in the right spot. Yeah, so, and I just showed quickly here that I added a sheet real fast, and it brought up the appropriate. I'm testing to make sure that it's finding that where it's supposed to rather than coming up with something bogus. And then I deleted the sheet because I just want to make sure it was working. Right. And then finally, we want to save this drawing that has all this stuff working in it as a drawing template. So I'm going to delete the view that I was using to help set up the notes and make the links. Do a file. This one's Save As now to save the drawing template. This is for File New type stuff or Make Drawing From. And you can either overwrite your templates or create a new one. But again, these should be out on your network in a multi-user environment so that you can use this going forward. So the DRW.dot file is what we're using here. So I call it SOLIDWORKS World something, B size. Okay, it won't save the tables. Okay, so my revision table is not going to stay there. My bill of material table or whatever, you put one in there that doesn't have anything, try to speed that up. Never worked for me before. I haven't tried it recently, so I could be wrong, but it's never really saved the tables. You still have to insert those on the fly. Question? Comment?
How do you deal with the multi-sheets and your linkages are set to a part? So when I do my second sheet is seeing the linkage to that first part or that first assembly. So ultimately what we're doing is we're editing the title block on sheets 2, 3, 4, and so forth. Because the only one that's clear is the first sheet.
You're saying when you add the second sheet and you put a view on it, or even before you put a view on it, it doesn't reference the information from the first page?
It does, but when you put in a part, then every sheet after that links
Has the same information?
and multiple parts on the sheet.
Oh, so sheet 1 might be one part number, sheet 2 might be another part number, and you want the title block to reference this sheet's.
So the titles will be different.
Yeah, I could see how that might be a problem. I'm not aware of a solution for that. I can't say I've tried to do that. The only thing I can think of off the top of my head is the notes. You can have those, well, for a title block, that's not going to work. You can have a note that's linked to the view, but that's not going to work out real well.
It's also para being created from a configuration. All the different para created from is a part of different configuration.
This is, yeah, there's some documentation methodologies where I've seen this in more of an architecture. It's still mechanical engineering, but it's more architectural. It was a skid system where you bring in a skid and it has a whole bunch of process piping and motors and filters and stuff on it. When they sell that, when they document that, it's one drawing. Now it's like 30 pages long and they're all different sizes and orientations, but it's one drawing. But they got everything, you know, first it's a small drawing, shows the big assembly, and then you break down into the individual components and stuff.
At the bottom, when you do properties, you can say which view that you're referencing to fill in the properties in your title block. So on your second sheet, couldn't you just specify a different view that is in your second sheet that would have those different part numbers?
You're saying there's a right-click option on the second on a sheet to say which view to reference?
I'm asking if it, because I know on the first sheet, you can pick which view, so it defaults to the first view that you answer, right?
Okay.
So you can actually select a different view.
Oh,
Like have a different part number. And
okay.
it'll fill in the title block with that.
Well, that sounds like an excellent thing to check out. I'm not familiar with that, so thanks for sharing that. Maybe you two want to talk a little bit more, since it's kind of important to you. So great for sharing.
Switch it from the model to the component within that property.
Well, it sounds like you can tell it which view is first, which would be helpful on the second page to pick a different view from a different part. So here I'm just showing that there's my template now, and when I say make drawing from, it's ready to go. So just about done here. Configuring the part and assembly templates. You want to make sure, oops, back up. Yeah, here we go. That you've got your part and assembly templates. If there's more than one, obviously there's a part and assembly. You got multiple part templates maybe, that you set up the file properties so that they work with your drawing now. You might have just used one example. You'll make sure your part template, assembly templates are set up that way. So things like description, material, weight, finish, any of those things you're using, you want to make sure that those are set up. I like to have those all predefined. Some people like the list. You drop down and you fill in, you pick description from a list, and you pick material. Well, that's just too tedious. That should always be in the part templates ready to go for me, so I don't have to do it. I assign material. There's already a spot for it to pull the material, and it's already going to go to the drawing. And I don't have to do anything but assign the material. Because if I got to do anything more, there's likely a chance I'm going to screw it up and it's not going to work. View orientations in the part. Actually, I'll just show the video and I'll talk to it. So here's the file properties. Again, description, material, whatever. You might add something like this one we're going to add here. Weight. Okay. I don't have a weight right now, but I'm going to pull down the mass and have it reference that, so that if we have a weight note on the drawing, it can always fill that out. So I'm just checking the units here because I'm going to actually put in a little extra text so it says pounds instead of nothing, just a number. So you can add a mixture of the smart note and then extra text there for the extension of pounds. All right, what else we got here? I want to say we're going to do the view stuff. Yeah. So you might want to have a reverse isometric view on a drawing on occasion. So if you take your sample part and you flip it over, hit the space bar and name this as reverse ISO, you'll have this in your part templates going forward, so that you don't have to create it each time that you need it. Right? If you find that comes in handy. So I've saved the view so I can switch back and forth to the views anytime I need, and I can always go get my reverse ISO. And it's right in my part now. You might want to look at your document properties for your drafting standard in particular. If you got something custom, your units, whatever you're using, you want to set there. Image quality, this slide bar, SOLIDWORKS usually sets it more in the middle. I like to move it closer to the left here. If you go too far, it looks like a hexagon. I put it closer to the R and faster because I want the system to perform as fast as possible. And for most documents, it seems to work out okay, a lot further to the left. And then in the few cases where you need it to be better resolution or whatever, you can drag the slide bar one file at a time as needed. If you find yourself doing it every day, you probably have it too far to the left. But just a couple other settings that I would change. And then you go and delete your test geometry or whatever, delete your feature, delete your sketch, and then we're going to save this as a part template with that reverse view in it, with those properties changed and whatnot. So file save as a part template. It's going to capture anything in the document properties that we changed, like the units, drafting standard, and whatnot. And then it should be linked up to work with my drawing template and my sheet format. And of course, I would go test this again. There's a lot of testing in order to make sure this works well. So, what am I doing here? Saving it. Oh, I'm saving this as the part template. I don't think I show the testing. So, yeah, it's there, isometric, but no geometry, so it's not going to do any good. And I think if you look closely at that video, I screwed up. I saved it in the reverse ISO view, which would have really messed with people. And then you'd be going back around and changing things again a little bit. So last little bit here, additional items to configure that I'm not actually showing. Table templates, like your general table if you use in the whole table. Bill of materials, a lot of people have their way of doing bill of materials. So you got to create a bill of material with some assembly and maybe rearrange the columns, add some information and that sort of stuff. And then you want to save that as your bill of material template that you use going forward. Revision tables, if it needs to be changed different than what SOLIDWORKS' default are. There's a few other tables on the drawings. Weldment cut list, it's kind of its own special animal. And bottom line, test it before you turn it loose on everybody. So that's pretty much the end of the presentation. These are all the presentations that the people from my company are putting on this year. So there's quite a few of them. We've pretty much gone through about half of them so far, yesterday and today. So there are other ones if you want to check out some of the stuff from us, but that's the end. Questions?
The example you showed where you added hard text for units, pounds in the maps. If everybody's asked for enhancement test and have it automatically done by SOLIDWORKS instead of manual, because if you change your units of your part and then file to millimeters,
then it doesn't match up.
Or kilograms,
Yes.
Doesn't match up.
It's not.
But I think it's harder to take that.
Right. Those guys down here, about halfway down this way.
Go down there and tell them that.
I'll go tell them, because I agree. That's a couple things. What was the other thing I was going to tell? Oh, the toolbar for the command manager is too hard to add. So I'll go tell them both of those. I already told them a couple before I came in here.
I've heard this more than once.
Yeah, we got to get some votes on those, right? So, well, great. Thanks for coming. Hope you enjoyed it. You can fill out the surveys on your app.